Yo, Alaska's Autistic Artist here. Today we'll be breaking down how to create really effective character arcs. No question about it. Could be a comic book, could be a movie, could be a TV show. But regardless, it is absolutely important that you learn to tell these stories with characters. And whether or not you're character-driven or plot-driven, it has to have characters. Not just that, but a character tree, which is what we'll be discussing as sort of the structural basis. I did not take ownership of this. This is just my analysis of said character tree. But you'll notice in the picture that it is important for creating characters, and it is important to do so before determining his or her arc. Like, you need to flesh out the character before you determine the arc, and that's what we'll be discussing here. The image in the description is property of Rocket Jump Studios. As for my aforementioned character versus plot endeavor, some directors favor theme and plot, which regardless you need to have a theme, but some directors favor plot over actual character development. And some directors just don't make good characters altogether. Not looking at you, Michael Bay. Luke Skywalker and Logan are examples of plot and theme versus character. Now we're moving on to what I call the lower body section of the character arc. It's absolutely imperative that you get these, at least one of these two done. Actually, both of those two, they're just important. No way around it. The feet represents what's inherently obvious about the character. Like, what's the immediate surface detail when you see me? Red shirt, weird voice, monotone voice, brown hair, blue eyes, all that. And clearly obsessed with superheroes, judging by the poster in the background. And another example, which I'm avoiding a hairy feet joke about Frodo Baggins here. Frodo Baggins' inherently obvious details are that he is short, cheerful, and, well, I can't get around it, he has hairy feet. Funny. But those are the inherently obvious things about his character. And the groin, that represents what the character wants deep down, often in opposition to what he needs, which we'll discuss later. I'll mention this a lot more later, but the need is the truth the story is trying to tell. Whether it's character-driven or plot-driven, the truth is like the theme of the story, the moral of the story. However, a good little tip is that the simpler the want, the more compelling the character. As you'll see with Wile E. Coyote, a character who wants to catch the Roadrunner, our hero. However, he's more compelling because we know what he wants. Also, it's only by discovering the truth that the character is able to move on and learn what he needs to discover. Now we're going to the upper body without head, although you'll notice Cyclops' head is right next to the without head sign. Laugh at that. The heart, which is the first part of the upper body, describes what the character deeply needs, often in opposition to what he or she wants. So the groin was about the wants, the heart is about the needs. The heart is arguably the core of the story too, the core of the theme. An example is Iron Man, Tony Stark. He needs to put past any desire he might have for self-indulgence in order to move on and save people and help people. The throat, which is, we're building up layers of the character as you can tell. The throat is how the character tries to project himself regardless of the stuff below, regardless of the nethers. Cyclops, for example, from the X-Men, tries to present himself as a stoic, infallible leader. And you'll notice this picture is above Iron Man's, even though I technically mentioned it after. Look it up. Next, it's the brain and head and why they're important. Now, because of its obscurity, I won't be using examples here. The right cheek and left cheek represents how artistic, logical, or just straight up intelligent the character is. It's especially important if you're dealing with a character with a very specific set of skills. Now, the crown is important for writers who like to simplify their characters. Like, that's the next step up, that's the top of the character tree. Which is basically the archetype, however altered, that the character is. So like Hooker with a heart of gold, that could be one, don't look that up. Now this is a bit of a long slide, but this is the character arc as it relates to plot. Now, I'm sure all of you know what 3X story structure is by now. It's been touched by seemingly every YouTuber out there. The thing about it is, it's important to use this information, especially after you create the fleshed out character I just mentioned. You see, you need to start from the end. That storytelling device is age-old, but you need to determine the theme, the truth that you're trying to tell way early on in order for this to be compelling. But you need to take into account the heart the heart of the story that I mentioned earlier. And you need to begin the story as far away from this heart need as possible. Like, for example, you just need to establish an ordinary world that's completely apathetic to any truth this character needs to learn, which you've established during the heart. But you need to end it with that truth and begin it far away from that. Simple? And the entire first act is important for developing character arcs. Like, once you're locked into conflict with an adversary at the end of the first act, you need to spend that second act like questioning if the ordinary world is true, if the groin is true and the heart isn't. And you need to end it with the heart, obviously, but the second act is him her basically learning the lesson he'll slowly but surely learn. And you need to remember the third act, because it needs to be planned way early on. It's important from start to finish. And character-driven or plot-driven, the theme needs to be taken into account. Like, you can't forget the theme. And in the case of Inside Out, you have to embrace sadness in order to be rounded out. Look up lessons from the screenplay. Love that channel. But ultimately, nothing can go wrong if you use a combination of the character tree and 3-act story structure. Honestly, you could deviate from it all you want, but it depends. Armed with these tools, almost nothing could go wrong, especially if you make original spins on it. Well, that's all I got for you. If you liked this video, please like or subscribe. You can have links to my social media accounts. There's links to my Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon, and a few other accounts in the description below. Be sure to subscribe or follow all of them. And that's all. Alaska's Autistic Artist, signing off.